These are three presidents, all Republicans, as you'll know. First is Lincoln's from Lincoln's second inaugural, March 4th, 1865. So you have to remember when this was. The Civil War was still raging. Appomattox came along a few weeks later, and then, of course, Lincoln was assassinated on April 15th. With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which we may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. This next reading is from Eisenhower's farewell address, January 17th, 1961. Down the long lane of the history yet to be written, America knows that this world of ours, ever growing smaller, must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate, and be instead a proud confederation of mutual trust and respect. Such a confederation must be one of equals. The weakest must come to the conference table with the same confidence as we do, protected as we are by our moral, economic, and military strength. And then the last is from Ronald Reagan's final address, January 11th, 1989. This is his vision of America. In my mind, it is a tall, proud city built on rocks stronger than oceans, windswept, God-blessed, and teeming with people of all kinds, living in harmony and peace. A city with free ports that hum with commerce and creativity. And if there have to be city walls, the walls have doors and the doors are open to anyone with the will and the heart to get here.
Thank you, Eddie. Wonderful talk. So here's a concern that I have, and I wonder if you have some insights about how the legal community might be prepared to respond. Here's what my concern is, that it's very likely that Iran will respond, and my concern is that even a mild response from Iran will provoke Trump to declare martial law and to state that we're at war, and that he might even suspend elections in a state of martial law. So that's one of my major concerns. I was also thinking about Kim Roosevelt and Iran in the first place. We caused regime change in Iran. If I could whisper in the ears of the Iranian people, I would say their best revenge would be regime change here, and for us to get rid of our current president. But anyway, my question is about, do people have their eyes on that? And is there a strategy going forward if Trump decides to declare martial law and suspend voting?
Well, there are certainly people thinking about this. There are networks of attorneys who are, I don't know, I work, Carol and I are sort of on the fringes of one of them, but that's mainly about people being laid off from federal jobs and birthright citizenship and a few things. We haven't been asked to work on martial law. But I have to believe at least at the law school level, the scholarly level, there is a lot of thought about what to do about it. There is the posse comitatus statute that prohibits the military from becoming domestic police officers, essentially. Now, like any law, it only matters if you can enforce it somehow, or if people will comply with it. And the troops in California are right on the border of that. I can tell they just pushed right up to the edge of that without maybe going over the line. And so I think there's still a concern about that. No doubt somebody would bring a request for an injunction, the ACLU or some network of people, and a court would enjoin it. Whether the administration paying any attention to that. I don't know. I mean, ultimately, I think that there's such a tradition in this country of the rule of law, of the government not suspending civil liberties, that I would like to think that the political forces are the ultimate remedy here. That's what's going to keep Trump from doing that. Republicans are going to be looking at an election in 2026.
If you think back to the days when we played games in school and you ended up having a team that lost to your team and they decided that you didn't deserve to win, so they were going to come out and play harder and meaner and break the rules and deny the referees and the umpires the rights to distinguish what was good or bad. Well, when the Civil War ended, there was a whole nation of people that held those grudges tightly. And for generations and generations, waited for the right moment. And I think what we're looking at is a sub-nation, if you will, a sleeping giant that is woken, and the dragon is fierce, and the rules that we think we made up at Gettysburg, they don't apply.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. The reason I included that quote from Abraham Lincoln was, you have to remember when that was said. That was said, Appomattox hadn't happened yet. That was March, and Appomattox was April 9th, I think. So the Civil War was raging. And he starts out, with this famous line, with malice toward God. So I think a lot has to do with, I don't deny one bit, there are grudges and resentments all, 100 years later, 150 years later. But people look to their leaders for whether they should let those demons out, or whether they should keep those demons inside. They look to their leaders to kind of encourage their better angels, as Lincoln would say.
Thanks, Andy, for raising a conversation about the specific issues. There is one overriding principle that I worry about is accountability. I don't see a mechanism for accountability in the system as we have it arranged now. Trump ignores the law, the Justice Department drops cases. When people are found guilty, they're given pardons. I don't see marshals going around arresting federal functionaries. Nobody has spent a minute in jail, despite all the patently illegal things that have gone on since January 20th. Where is accountability and where is it going to come from?
Yeah. Well, it was a failure, clearly, on the part of the system and a lot of individuals, that we had no accountability for for Trump, and particularly trying to overturn the election. You can name individuals, and they clearly, Bonnie Willis, for example, she didn't do a good job with that. You might even argue Merrick Garland moved too slowly. Robert Mueller came right up to the end in his report, but didn't want to say there was evidence of obstruction, shows obstruction of justice, which he felt, but he didn't say. So there are a lot of times when the system failed. I think ultimately, it would be nice to see legal accountability someday. I would sure like to see it, but political accountability is more important. So that's the reason that assuming we still have elections, and I think we will, that's what's going to change the leadership. It will change everything. I mean, we have a kind of difficult situation here where there is no way to change the the leadership of the executive branch in the Justice Department for 4 years. I mean, we were 3.5 years we're stuck with it. We just got to live through it. Hope to God the courts will protect us.
Don?
And to put a little cap on that, we didn't end up hanging General Lee or the Confederate president or anything, or imprisoning anybody. So that's something to think about too. But I was wondering, there's something we have to say, I think, about what the South has done since the end of that war. And what they have done is brought to the fore some of the things we have to think about now on our side. They were the ones that brought up, as I understand, Posse Comitatus was brought up by Southern.
Maybe I'm just too optimistic or too naive or something. But we're in a very strange political situation where you got a group of people, maybe 30% of the public, I don't know, 25% of the people, that are really hardcore supporters of the president. Well, that's not enough to win an election, but it's enough to beat any Republican if they don't have that 25% or that 30%. So that's why you see a shockingly passive Congress that I know most of those people probably think a lot of this stuff is crazy, but they're afraid, they're politically afraid to do anything about it because of that group. So, but the good news is that, first of all, that's not a majority of the country. And there are a lot of people in the middle who are listening to both sides of this debate. And their minds can be changed. We just have to, offer a reasonable, thoughtful, strategic alternative, and I think we can do well in the 2026 and in 2028. I think there's going to be a sea change.
Thanks, Eddie. I always enjoy what you have to say, and especially today. A couple things struck me. You can't ignore the economic aspects of the situation. We have a great wealth disparity in this country. Having said that, however, the bulk of the country is better off than it ever has been. But they're not as well off as they could be. And it's that well off to be what I could be, or how I can rise above my current status, that really motivates a lot of them.
Yeah.
The other part of that is, and the other one I would say, is that I think back to Hal Rogers, who was my soccer coach in high school. He said, hey, you can't win a game playing defense. You got to have an offense. The problem is, there's no offense on the other side.
Yeah.
Okay, they're all playing all defense and offering up no relative alternative.
Well, one of the traditional problems of the party in opposition is there's no natural leader, and therefore no natural spokesman. And the ones that you would point to, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, honestly, they're not the greatest, most inspiring people in the world. But that will obviously change as we get close to 2028 and we have a leader. And if the Democrats take the House in 26, which I think they will, you'll have the House passing bills. They won't become law, but that will be the alternative. That will be, here's what you get, the other side. But to go back to something you said, the reason I think it's not good to demonize the opposition is that a lot of those people who voted for Trump voted for economic reasons. They're not very well thought out. They turned out not to make much sense.
Goodness, which is why some of the decisions that were made that led us to this point, tough decisions weren't made.
Right.
And I don't know how we're going to get out of this quagmire.
Well, I agree with you. There were decisions early in the Biden administration that turned out to be wrong. Turned out to be not getting control of the border, getting one of the main ones, I'm sure. They were spending too much money and letting inflation get out of control. Some decisions there. But if you try to translate what you're saying into now, I mean, you have to kind of think through what it means to have a more aggressive opposition. If you go to Los Angeles and you start turning over cars and, wave the Mexican flag and everything, you're not talking about that, but that gets us nowhere. I wish our political leaders were more inspiring, more articulate. We just have what we have.
We have some good ones.
There are some good ones coming.
Not giving them the chance.
Yeah. So we've got to have a new generation of leaders. But imagine the reaction around the country if he suggested putting off the election. Every Republican who's up for election would have to say whether they agreed with that or not. And if they said, well, maybe it's warranted or something like that, I think the House and Senate would change as long as we have the election. Now, so yes, I do think we'll have an election. I do think that if the Republican Party finally says enough is enough, he's going to stop. But I don't have any guarantees.
Sue. Eddie, thank you. I've got a problem with two words. One is respect and the other is respectable. And I can muster up being respectful to people I disagree with, but I cannot, they don't warrant my respect if they haven't earned it. And that's just a struggle for me. I cannot just give overwhelming, cannot be respectable just for the hell of it.
I know what you mean. And that's the reason I distinguish between respect for the leaders on the other side. You have to be civil at all times. I mean, there's no point in lowering ourselves to discourse that they use. There's just no advantage to that. But being respectful to leaders, I don't think you have to have respect for leaders who are taking our country in a terribly wrong direction. It's the other voters. It's the voters on the other side.
Eddie, you gave us a partial answer before, and we're getting competing messages. And one of the messages is just concentrate on making yourself happy and be joyful and don't pay attention to all this. And I think we have a moral duty to, as you said, pay attention to this and to take action. And sometimes they're really small actions. I had trepidation when I got impeached Trump magnets for my car to stick on our cars. But I have, although I had a few people make faces, I have not had anybody say anything negative, but I have had a lot of thumbs ups and people saying, "Oh, good for you! I like your sticker." So, but I got magnets because I didn't want something I couldn't take off.
Well, let me just say, I did say at the end, it's a nice point to be patient for your own mental health.
Yeah.
But I certainly don't mean be passive. One more time.
So I have two comments. One is in relation to your magnets.
I had a bumper sticker glued onto my car that said, "Make America Green." No, what is it? "Make America Green Again." And somebody tore it off. And not only did they tear it off, it took them 2 times because I noticed the corner was being poked at. So I cut the corner off so they couldn't grab it, and they came back and got it anyway. So that was confrontational to them enough that they felt they needed to do that. Right. The other thing I wanted to say is, for all the things that we don't like about Trump, the lesson that I take away from him is he's a magnificent manifester. So whatever he wants, he creates for himself. And that's something that we can all do. We need to just make sure that we're creating from where we are morally. He's creating from where he is morally. It's not great for everyone else. But when we create from where we are morally, and we take our intention and we put that into words, and we share our vision with other people in a place, from a place of love, and we spread our vision for what we want the country to be, that puts into motion the wave, the vibration of love, of creation, of a whole different image. And if we just keep it to ourselves with worry, then it doesn't go anywhere. He doesn't keep it to himself. He says, this is how the world is. I'm the king. He doesn't come out and say that yet, but that's where he's going with it, And so we have to be just as bold and forceful in our love, in our compassion, and in our efforts to do good in the world, and to make it very explicit that that's our intention.
Yeah.